My name is Roger. I'll be guiding you through today's session. And today's call is based on a little book report, which was recently published by the LLI entitled Agile Working Methods for Legal Departments. So we will start out by Tobias Broda, Senior Vice President and EMEA Counsel for PTC, to give us a summary of that booklet and what's been written there. And then I will present you with some of my ideas on the topic before introducing our wonderful panel guests. We always have wonderful panel guests, but this time we have especially wonderful panel guests. So, and I will ask each of them an introductory question, kind of as a warm-up. And then there will be a free-floating discussion, hopefully interesting for everybody. As always in our calls, you as the audience will be muted, but if you want to share your opinions and views and ask questions, please do so in the chat, and we will try to incorporate that as we go along and as it's possible. And also, of course, we will not only focus on the report, but we will kind of in the discussion, take a more holistic view on Agile in general, and focus on the question that we asked in the title: how suited is Agile for the legal industry? All right, enough introduction. Tobias is here with us today. Tobias, give us your view and kind of summary of the report that was recently published by the LLI, Agile Working Methods for Legal Departments.
Yes, thank you very much, Roger. So I hope you can see and hear me. So that's a one-way street today, and you can realize I'm not Daniel, who was supposed to kick that off here. So I'm not the coolest general counsel in Europe, obviously, as he was absolutely rightfully announced already on LinkedIn. And this is, of course, a disappointment. But you will be seeing him later in the panel, so no reason to panic. Yes, so I have been rotating into this role here in a very agile way as of yesterday, which already displays obviously my exposure to agile methodologies, and very happy to be here. So my name is Tobias. I'm the EMEA Counsel for PTC. That's a Boston-based software company. We are bringing the power of digital and agile to our industrial customers. So how they develop their products, how they manufacture them, and how they service them. Yeah, so a little bit of like agility and digitalization really in our DNA here. That's just as an introduction. Now, to kick that off, imagine the following situation. One beautiful day, your general counsel comes to you and asks you, Peter, Paul, and Mary, Agile, do you think it's suited for the legal industry? Should we maybe embark on our own like agile transformation journey? And you think like, maybe, I don't know. Or you think, yes, because it's cool, and you think you are cool as well. Or you think you're beyond cool and say, well, I'm skeptic. I think it's just another fad that is being chased here. But at the end of the day, I think very few people have really an understanding of what is agile for legal, yeah? And what can legal do with agile. Yeah? So what is this all about? How can I get started? And why should I be doing that? Yeah? So you might have been attending a number of webinars and you have a faint idea of what agile is, but this connection, agile and legal, I think that is rather rare. Yeah? But relax, lean back. The age of darkness and confusion is over, because the LLI White Book on agile methodologies for the legal department is there. Everything in there. You think I'm overstating or overselling here? Well, I don't think so. But in order to prove that, I think I will be telling you a little story in order to somehow illustrate what experiences and what insights went into this book. So once upon a time, the LLI was still a handful of people sitting together and sharing big ideas and small beers. I met Dirk Schindler, also on the panel today with some further agile and digital rock stars. We in our team were doing something that we called legal analytics. So we were trying to capture the way we work and the transactions we are involved in and the time we're spending and the territories we are covering in an Excel spreadsheet, you know, in order to gain some data-driven insights, what goes well and what not. Not really scalable, but still interesting. Dirk was interested in understanding the KPIs and metrics we're collecting. And then he told me that the Bosch legal department is working on establishing a agile meta management system. So that was really super, super interesting for me. And we have embarked on the same journey. So what we have done is we have taken Azure DevOps, so a Microsoft solution that has been designed originally for software development. So really where Agile was born. Yeah? And we configured it in a way that this is suitable now for our legal meta management. There are a lot of tools and functionalities in that, so not enough time to dig into this very deeply, but just one core element of that is a digital Kanban board. So every team member is putting his or her matters on that Kanban board. You have different stages there, so new work that is coming in, then actively working on a given matter, pending because you're waiting for customer feedback or for finance or whatever, and then ultimately close. So different stages of the matter that you're working on. You can then filter this in all dimensions. Yeah, you can organize your individual work, but you also have a 360-degree view, really what is going on in the team. Sounds agile already? Yes, correct. But I think the important part here, it's not only about the digital piece here in the Kanban board. We have like supplemented that and augmented that with really agile working methodology. Thankfully, we had an agile coach who was teaching us how to leverage this solution in an agile way. So what have we done? We have set up a cadence of weekly calls, Monday a planning session, then a couple of scrums over the week, a tribe session, so a team call on more programmatic things on the Thursday, retrospective on the Friday in order to understand what went well and what we need to improve. Yeah. So how does such a Scrum session now work? So we're coming together in smaller groups, so-called squads, 5 people. People are pulling up their matters that they're actively working on right now. So you're seeing what they're working on. They are telling you what's going on. And in particular, they are asking for certain help from the team. Yeah? So certain roadblocks. Have you ever experienced a situation with a customer? I'm just in a situation right now where I don't know how to move forward. And then you're getting like instant feedback, and also junior people in the team are really instantly enabled by the like swarm intelligence in the scrums. Yeah, what that leads to is that the team members are being put in a position, are empowered to really very independently drive their matters and then also make their decisions. Yeah? So at the end of the day, it is a continuous like know-how exchange and learning curve that we're going through every week. Yeah? Another side effect there is that you're creating visibility. So you're seeing also what members of the team are working on where you didn't have so much touching points with so far. So it is also cool for these team members that their work and their impact and their contributions are being visualized and appreciated, which is one of the side effects there. Yeah? At the end of the day, I think what we're creating there is a room, a place, a platform for social interaction on specific topics, of course, from our profession, visualized by the respective matters on the Kanban board. Yeah? And this is where also now the digital piece comes into play, and really the power of digital and agile. Because we are putting in certain data into our matters, and because all these like movements over the Kanban board are being tracked digitally, this is all being fed into Power BI, so a business intelligence platform where we can very well analyze our productivity, our regional coverage, how well or not well certain cross-functional interactions are working. And this is just a fantastic add-on here. Yeah? What you would have to imagine probably is that it's a like power cycle of digital and agile. We are using agile methodology that is supported and enabled by digital technology, yeah, Kanban board, Azure DevOps here. This is creating effortless data, if you will, that is fed into a business intelligence tool that is giving us insights, data-driven insights into how we could again improve and refine our methodology and our operational excellence. Yeah, this is what it's all about, I think, and this is really agile for legal in beyond buzz, I would think. Yeah? So what you're then further experiencing in this now we're doing this for 2 years on this whole journey is that collaboration culture is changing, leadership styles are changing, people are stepping up, are being empowered, are being enabled really. Yeah, the team is coming together closer. And I think what is really important also, you're more and more seeing the big picture also, how these pieces are coming together, what your contribution is. So the purpose of your work is being more prominently displayed there, and you feel that you are part of something that is achieving something. Yeah, good. So then I think all these aspects now, and I would like to share my screen and show you now the Liquid Legal work white book. Yeah, but I can't, I think, probably. So if somebody would be so kind to share that and just go into the table of contents. Yeah, so all of these experiences that Dirk and his team, my team and I, or for example, Daniel with another tool with Jira have made, or Stefan in Eon, obviously Kai and the KPMG team as external consultants, all these like really practical experiences have went into the book. Yeah? So you're getting some tangible, specific, practice-oriented insights and advice and hopefully inspirations out of this book. And I think this is why it's so valuable for you. Yeah. Now, closing this, if then your general counsel comes to you and asks you, Agile, do you think this is really suited for the legal industry? You can say, hell yes, I have read the book. That is the introduction.
Tobias, thank you so much for giving us this intro I like this expression, Agile for Legal Beyond Buzz. So you mentioned some of the key terms already, you know, the big picture, transparency, motivating people to work together, collaboration, motivating young people to be seen and heard. Let me just briefly give my view on the topic. When I first heard the words Agile and legal departments together, I kind of thought this doesn't fit together, you know, because you know, Agile comes from the software industry. It comes from the idea of developing quick prototypes and then, you know, kind of improving them as you go along. And legal departments work with the law. The law is something very stable and very solid. And legal departments have to ensure regulatory compliance, and they have to make sure that legal risks are being reduced. And if they take this 20/80 approach, you know, they might bankrupt the company or have some people go to jail. So, but then last week, our panelists and I, we had a very nice, very interesting discussion, and I actually, listening to their insights and experience made me change my mind. I think it does go together, like you said, Tobias. Hell yeah, it goes together. So let me see if what our panelists have to say will make you have the same impression that I had, make you change your mind and see that Agile can actually be a game changer in the legal departments and the legal industry. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce our panelists for today. Start with Dr. Dirk Schindler, one of our co-CEOs at the Liquid Legal Institute, who earns his money at Robert Bosch, working there as a VP for corporate legal services in the area of mobility. We also have with us Andreas Wolf. He's a leadership and transformation coach at Shift Happens. Then also today here, Astrid Kaspari, Scrum Master and Agile Coach at Agile Heroes. And last not least, I like the term the coolest legal counsel here. That sounds great. Dr. Daniel Half. He's the General Counsel at AGILE and also a keynote speaker on topics of digitalization. Astrid and gentlemen, welcome to this session. Dirk, let me start with you because you're one of the few people who seem to have actually implemented Agile. You know, it's great to hear so much talk about it, and everybody's a coach, and not everybody, but you know, a lot of people are coaches and love the idea and promote it. But I'm not sure that so many people have actually implemented it with reporting good business results as you do in terms of KPI, but also even more important, and Tobias, you touched on that, reporting back that people are excited, so that the people doing it actually love it. And what I thought initially, them saying, hey, we're lawyers, we're not software people, you know, leave us alone with that stuff, is actually not happening. And that was fascinating to hear. So from your perspective, Dirk, what do you think are the crucial success factors in actually applying and using Agile in legal departments?
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Happy to share. So I think the first one is that I would call it respect the method. It is if I may say so, a methodology. Actually, it's several, but it really needs the respect to go into the methodology, understand it, where does it come from, how did it develop, what can it do, and then based on that, define your why. So what is actually the problem you're trying to resolve. So unless you're really clear towards yourself about why are you looking into agile methodology, how can you ever succeed, and how can you ever explain it to your folks? So I think that's the second piece. So respect the method, go into that, maybe leverage expertise, coaches. Second, understand your own why. Tobias mentioned the digital piece of it. I don't have to talk on that, but the last thing I would mention in terms of success factors, start and end with the people. In the end, this is a shift in mindset. It is a need for the people to understand the why, but also the how to implement it. And then it needs training. It's changing habits, it's changing mindsets. So also it's really important to keep a focus on where do people start. This is a very individual journey at times. And then also make sure that everyone on the team, including the leadership team, has their own path into, or towards the destination that you're hoping to get to. That would be my initial take.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Doug. Andreas, as a transformation coach, you apply a method that you described in the call as being both systemic and aesthetic. I was struck by that. I mean, systemic, I understand when you go into a situation, you look at it holistically, at all the factors and how they influence each other. And you said that as by also applying kind of this aesthetic approach, you want to appeal to the physical senses, people's hearing, seeing, of the people involved. Can you elaborate for us how this approach of systemic and aesthetic transformation applies to Agile and to legal departments?
I'd be glad to. And let me start with reflecting on the way we are already speaking. Mm-hmm. We are speaking super fast-paced.
Me.
Super fast-paced. I mean, it is part of the format. It is part of the format, and by email you announced it that this is a fast-paced format. It's fine, and at the same time, I assume fast-pacedness, it is not a value in itself, and I fear that both. Let me start with a provocative statement and then answer your question.
I love provocation.
Where agile and legal might fit, and I surely believe that it has its fits, I can imagine it might reinforce bad habits as well. Not only, of course, but for example, the bad habit of the assumption, the underlying assumption that fast is good. Fast is not good.
Let's say it's not always good.
Fast is a way to go, but it's not always the best way.
Yes.
And and this is an aesthetic statement. The systemic statement, as we all know, is a perspective from without, from the external. And it covers like a bird's eye view on the patterns of people cooperating behavior, or what shapes their normality. It has to do with the context. You have to understand situation and circumstances, and you have to change and intervene in setting and formal structure and circumstances in order to change behavior and to change the lives within and the interaction within. I would like, and there is nothing good or bad in a systemic view. It is just different. I mean, there's always tensions and structural contradictions in companies, whatever it is, and you can do it this way or that way. And whether it's better, it's not easily defined. We define it by KPIs. It's the hard ways, the hard factors, and it's true. It's the business mechanics that's needed. And as you say, in a knowledge economy, people are key. And in the knowledge economy, it's people with competences, and we stick to a context. It's very deeply trained and very valuable resources which are not easily replaced. And looking at people beyond business KPIs, we have another normative dimension which we can use. Systemic is a sociological background. It's only descriptive, no normative logic. And aesthetic gives another option of normative, of saying whether something is better or worse, whether a transformation has worst has worsened the original status or whether has improved something. And this is why we believe you need a binocular with two different lenses: the external view, which we use the systemic, and the interior view. This is like going into the perspective, into the moccasins of the people involved. How do they actually experience what the transformation, what the collaboration is about? And aesthetic comes, we know it all, we know it better from the opposite, anesthetics. It's when we are totally dumped pre-operation, no senses, no awareness anymore. Which means we highly believe, out of our coaching and consultancy business, today what we need is a higher awareness. A higher awareness also for the perceptions. How does it feel? How does it feel? Is there a gut feeling which kind of makes the stomach cramp? Is the chest getting tight because of the breathlessness around? Is there inner objections which somewhere even either individually or collectively in the atmosphere you can pick them up? And this is certainly a very important dimension for people. And we believe that the last point for intervening here, but also diagnostically, it merits a lot to look on language. Now I talked about the pace of language, but also what is the metaphors? What is the imaginary? Is it militaristic words? Is it sports, competitive logic, assumptions that are ingrained and not questions? What is the blind spots? And you can find them often by the things that nobody thinks about, both in the systemic, but also in the experiential, that means the aesthetic way. And we need to change narratives and not only methods.
Very interesting how you kind of already mentioned a lot of the aspects that are not part of the normal business perspective. And that, thank you for turning that off, and that apply to people. And Dirk already mentioned how important people are, and so did Tobias. Let's move on to Astrid. Astrid, you're experienced agile coach, but you haven't worked too much with legal departments yet. So let's use your kind of fresh and untainted perspective and ask you, how's your perception? I mean, we had the preparatory talk and we discussed things already, and I'm sure you're well informed about the legal industry as well. What's your feeling? Is the legal industry special? Do the lawyers and legal professionals need to be treated differently from other groups when it comes to agile?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't fix it on a certain topic. The first questions that I ask myself, or if I'm being asked, is agility, as you call it, is it suitable for us? Would it work here? It's actually not a topic, so legal, sales, IT, or whatever. There are other factors that I take into consideration. Sorry. The first is the nature of the task. So if you have a repetitive task that you can happily do on your own, you don't have too much interactions. And certainly, well, you can go with Kanban, for example, and at least you visualize all the tasks. That's always a good idea. It's always a good idea, in my opinion. But if you want to go for Scrum, for example, another methodology, in a repetitive task environment, it might be an overhead. And as it has been said before, you have to take the people with you. If you start bored the people and having an overhead with meetings or events that don't bring any benefits to them, you will lose them. So don't apply agility like Scrum into an environment where it's not beneficiary, because then you lose them and it makes a very negative environment. So the second thing is that I consider, apart from the nature of the task, is the conditions where you want to apply the agile methodology, whatever it is. There are certain specifics to any of the frameworks that we use in agility. If you have a very volatile, changing, uncertain, maybe so a little bit chaotic environment where you have to adapt a lot, there's always some new requirements or whatever there is. So you have to react a lot and have a lot of interactions. Then a Scrum framework, or even the solution is not known yet. You just have a very short sight. then you start with Scrum, because you can work iterative and incremental. You always get a feedback from the customer or the environmental stakeholders, and that makes it very valuable. So these are the two aspects that I consider. It's not a topic, it's about nature of task and the conditions. And another thing that has been also mentioned before is, of course, the culture where you want to apply it. And that might be something that I have heard from you. I think that is in a legal department, maybe a little bit more special than in a IT or sales or whatever. There are certain cultures to these departments. And it might be that very error-prone environment is not really suited to a professional counselor or something like that. So you have to be a little bit ready to make errors, to learn from it, try something new. That is something you have to be open to. So the cultural aspect and also the leadership aspect is very, very useful to have in place as well. To have a fruitful ground for agile frameworks and processes and practices. But I would say, as I learned from you last week, and as I have a little bit read around, I think the legal industry and departments are very well suited for agile methodologies, framework, or at least some elements out of them.
All right. Well, it seems we're very much in agreement already, which is on the one hand great. On the other hand, I hope there will be more a little bit of controversy like Andrea started, because it always makes for good discussions. But we are surely focused on people, on culture, and on making sure that the approach is taken seriously and that it fits the environment. Daniel, let me move over to you. You know, in our last week's session, you really struck me when you said I'm general counsel at AGILE, and at the evenings I do theater acting. I thought, wow, that's cool, you know. And it made me think that, you know, I wondered if lawyers or legal professionals could benefit from that, from maybe, you know, putting themselves in the shoes of others and playing a role, so to speak. And yeah, just question to you. Do you think that, you know, theater acting could be part of the legal education? Will practicing on stage and improvise, being agile, would that make for better lawyers in the future?
Thank you. Perhaps for better lawyers, but I also have a responsibility towards the audience. So I'm playing improvisational theater. And one thing I can tell you, lawyers are terrible in improvisational theater when you have them on stage, because if you're improvising, you're there with the others. You're a team, and you have to work together, and you have to be able to change on stage, which is something that's very, very difficult for lawyers. They can't be changed on stage. And they're very fast, something that Andrea said. They're very fast talkers. We call them talking heads. You know, they're not feeling, they don't have their emotions, they can't shut up, they can't just, you know, react with their body. And I'm not saying they can't at all. I'm being very, yeah, just a little bit pushy here. But this is an experience that I made with lawyers on stage. And for myself, I've been playing improvisational theater for more than 15 years now. So it's been quite a path for me, you know, from like this more intellectual person to being emotional on stage, for example. And I think this is a challenge for us lawyers, because when you think of a team, and that's the same when you are on stage, then when you're doing agile work, you know, you're always doing agile work as a team. You need the team for that. And this is something that we're not specifically trained in. You know, we're trained to work with text. We're trained to counsel somebody, of course. But I started off as a judge, for example, and I had 5 days a week where I was just sitting in my office looking at things somebody else has written or something I would write, and then half a day where I would meet people. And so this is, I wasn't trained being a judge, or I couldn't train to work in a team. But in a team, you have to have social interaction. So I think this is something that is a challenge for us lawyers, not for everybody, of course. Some people are just better with that, others aren't. But this is something that we have to learn. I think, of course, we can learn it, but we might have to unlearn a lot of what we learned as lawyers, like posture, and not, you know, like trying don't make mistakes. Don't let yourself be caught making mistakes. This is something else. You have to be able to admit that you don't know the answer. You might make a mistake here, or yeah, you just have to look it up. And I think, coming back to your point, would theater do any good for lawyers? I think yes, a training ground, not perhaps especially in front of an audience. And it doesn't have to be theater. I think what's important is that as a lawyer, you're more of a whole being, and you have to learn that you have areas where you can train social interaction, and it could also be in a club or something like that. But I think that's important. When you want to be more agile, you need to have more interests. You have to have more connection with other people within the company or outside of the company. It doesn't matter, but I think it always helps if you have a lot of interaction. So I would think, yes, you could do theater, but you could also do something else. And this is something that I would strongly encourage people to do during their studies or after that. Just, pursue your other interests. I know so many people who gave up on everything else when they started working as a lawyer because they felt like they didn't have any time to do anything else. But this, I think we're coming back to working with other people, and it's actually beneficial to know something else, to have something to talk about, to be able to communicate with very different people. So that's my statement.
So, and fascinating, absolutely fascinating, because what I heard you say is, with Agile, you always work in a team, whereas, the normal working style of the lawyer is like the lonesome wolf, right? I got my case, and maybe I also want to protect it from other people because I get bonus on it, I get paid on it. And also maybe I want to protect my knowledge from other people, because if I share it, they might make the money and I don't make it anymore. I got to say, I'm not a lawyer, by the way. So I'm actually a humanist in static philosophy, but I do talk fast. And so coming back to your point, Daniel, with not only learning new skills, but also unlearning certain skills, maybe this kind of perfectionism or so. So I'd like to kind of throw that into the round of what about education, and what do lawyers need in the future, and maybe also unlearn. Andreas, please.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to respond to that immediately. I loved everything you said, Daniel, and I totally favor the idea of theater education, but I contradict one side sentence that you made.
Awesome.
You said, of course, they can learn it. No, no. From a competence engineering point of view, it's not an of course. But there is, at least in certain methodologies of competence engineering, the one I refer to, we differentiate between 3 different modes of interactions, nature of interaction. I loved what Astrid said, the nature of the task, the nature of the situation, or the context. And now I would like to add the nature of a style of cooperation. And there is at least 3 different styles, which kind of are inbuilt preferences in people, which are growing out of biography and individual stand in the world. Yes, they might change, but not easily. You cannot learn them in a 2 weeks fast track course. The first is you work in parallel. I work here, you work there, I give you my thing when it's ready. I work isolated, we work in parallel. And I assume this is what legal professionals did in the past. The second is you work vis-a-vis. That means we have complementary roles, like the teacher, the consultant, the lawyer, the judge. I have one role, you have the complementary role, and we face each other, maybe even in a negotiation. This needs another internal kind of fabric of encountering another person. Also here, probably typical for a lot of lawyers. And there is the third part, which is with, in parallel to, in vis-a-vis, phase 2, or together with. And we co-create something, and in the co-creation mode, in the end, we do not know who is the owner of the result, because we can no longer tell what was your impulse and what triggered it in mine, and it is a co-creation of IP. And I believe this is probably the part that lawyers are most typically neither trained in, and maybe because it's not needed in the profession, it also draws humans who have a natural preference of not collaborating. And if this is the case, yes, let them embark on a 5-year journey of personal development by taking a coaching course or whatever, but I don't believe that they can learn it in 3 months.
Andreas, thank you. Dirk and Astrid, you raised your hands and I will call on you briefly, but Daniel, I want to give you the chance for a brief response because you've been addressed directly. Brief.
Thank you. I take that chance, but I have to agree. Of course, I didn't want to say that this is possible in 3 months. I said it took me 15 years to be a good improviser. I think this is a long journey, but we all been kids. We've all been able to play with other kids. So I think that's what we need to unlearn as lawyers. And there will be some preference, of course, which is always like a very basic part of us, and it won't change. But I think there's a lot of leeway that we still have that we can go towards other people. And that's it. I don't want to take more of the time.
Let out our inner child. Dirk and Astrid, please.
I think Dirk was first, yes.
Yeah, Dirk first,
Okay,
and then
thank you.
Astrid.
So I would like to add 2 aspects. One is on the very point, adapting is a key term, I think, in that, and I heard that from both of your statements. So if I look at my team at Bosch, for example, today versus 2.5 years ago when we started, it would have been impossible to be where we are today within 3 months. First, things need time. It is a change process on many, many levels. Second, we learn as we go. And I think that is the beauty of agile methodology, is that this is okay. This is not failure. This is not imperfection. It is built into the process of saying, well, this is what's good a year ago might be different today because circumstances change, people change, and so on. I think that's the first statement I would like to make. The second one is that maybe we run the risk of, as we did maybe with the legal tech wave, saying like, who cares what the question was? Legal tech was the answer, and now it might be agile. It's not. So and I like your statement about the nature of the task. So there is certain agile methodologies that address a certain element, but for example, and maybe just to put it out there, looking through the DevOps lens around the types of work that we need to address. There's administrative work, project work, the business work, and the unplanned work. There's very different approaches to optimize every category of work, and they can be totally different, be a whole adventure on their own and a whole change process on their own. So I think it's also fine to say like, what is really the respective agile methodology going to address, and where they need to take a different approach, a different view, and maybe also a different process to optimize types of tasks or types of work. That's the other thing I would like to share.
Thank you, Dirk. Astrid, please.
Yes, thank you. I also want to embark a little bit. Daniel, you gave us a really, really good topic here, I think. I also think like there are not everybody will respond very positively if you come along and you say like, now let's go agile. That won't happen. There are extrovert people, there are introvert people, and you have to deal with all of them. And also there is this aspect of practice and exercising the thing. That's why I actually favor a more rigid framework like Scrum over, for example, Kanban, because you are forced a little bit into having some processes. The events, they are all the time boxes. It's a given framework. You can later adapt it if it doesn't suit you, but you have a starting point, which is kind of a guideline for you that can help in the beginning, okay? But if you have those people around and they're not welcome you and say like, yoo-hoo, well, there is a new methodology, we have a change again, there is another transformation, they don't like it very often, but you get into the habit of doing these events. And in my experience, slowly and steadily, more and more people will see the positive effects of this direct communications, of really see what is the workload, to have this the professional exchange I talk about the dailies at the moment, then you also get into the reviews where you have the feedback, the direct feedback from the stakeholders, which in the best case gets you success feelings, of course. And also you understand better what you do. You get a sense of what you're doing. I think this applies to a legal person as well, to anybody else. If you have a direct contact with your stakeholder, your client, your customer, and you see like, okay, this is the right way I go forward, and you have a feeling of sense, what are you doing? And also, if you see that when you go into a retrospective, and I hope that everybody here is a little bit knows the framework Scrum a little bit. This is what I just explained. In a retrospective, you look at how you work together as a team, and that also might be a good benefit or improve the working style that you have. You feel the efficiency that you get. And all these are little steps into really receiving something beneficial out of the Agile framework. And if you are doing these events and you get together in a direct communication, you really practice it. You experience that people open up. But it's not from one day to the other, not at all. You really have to be there, and you cannot put yourself off if people say, no, this is too many events, I don't know, meetings, better said, I don't want to take part anymore, it's too much waste of time. You have to be a little bit strict in the beginning, but usually get a lot of beneficial fruits out of it. That's my experience so far.
Thank you, Astrid. Tobias, you raised your hand.
Yes, thank you. So, very interesting conversation here. I just think that we could really be a little bit bolder in some regards. Yeah. So maybe it's because I'm working in the software industry. Yeah. But Andreas, to your initial statement on like speed and that this is not a quality as such, I agree. However, a fast-paced environment is just the reality we're living in. Yeah. So you don't have to speak very fast in order to deal with that, but it's a requirement that you be able to cope with that. Yeah. Then on your other point, like that there are these different roles and you have more the face-to-face thing and so on versus the collaborative aspect. Yeah. Again, the latter is the reality for us. Yeah. So there is no like hierarchy. I'm the legal guy. I'm telling you whatever. It is a inner team and cross-functional and also external, always like collaborative mode in which we are in. Yeah. So I think the prerequisites for agility and for such methodologies are there. Then Astrid, on your point was like, if you have repeated and known things, then like a more conservative waterfall, whatever you want to call it, style is the appropriate one. The more unknown and like iterative tasks you have to deal, that is suitable for agile. Again, I think the latter is the reality. I mean, we have so many permanent change and new things that we have to deal with. So I find it hard to still find the place where you could kind of go the conservative way. Yeah? And then last but not least, on taking people on a journey and making this cautious and so on. So I agree with that on the one hand. On the other hand, we have the digital natives there sitting in our teams. Yeah, and this is just the way they want to work. Yeah, this is not like Outlook and email based, but this is the way from a look and feel perspective, from an interactive perspective, they would want to work. So I feel sometimes that we are maybe just like putting too much brakes on our own train and our journey here, where really the requirements are there to act in that way, and also the readiness of people is there in order to embark on that. So.
Interesting comments. You worked off a whole list there, Tobias. Great. Let me come back to something that Astrid, that you said. You know, agile, it's not like it's this one thing, right? It's this kind of umbrella term or potpourri of different frameworks or approaches. You know, you have Scrum, you have Kanban, you have extreme programming. You could probably count Lean into it as well. Who knows what it all comprises? And so that's another thing that struck me, that sometimes it seems like Agile has become such a fascinating and much talked about topic because everybody can understand or may understand different kinds of things or different concrete approaches under it. You said that Scrum is more a more rigid approach where you have these roles and you have these dailies and so on. I guess I would like to ask all the panelists, including Tobias, if how do I find out what agile approach is right to me? Dirk, when we first talked about it, you said, your coach said it's like going to supermarket. You know, you can buy things for a five course French meal, or you just buy some pasta and cheese, you know, that's also good. So how do you know what the right combination of agile methodologies is? Anybody?
I can, since you addressed me, I can
Yeah.
give a short initial answer. So two elements that I mentioned before, I think really take time to define your why. What is the issue you're trying to resolve? What is the goal you're pursuing? And even questioning, do you already have it in your hands, or is that a superficial first step and there's maybe an end destination that you actually have in mind? So really take time to do that, because I fully agree with Astrid. This, you know, the worst thing you can do is kind of try to play tennis and take a football on court. So it's just not going to work really well. So I think that's one. And then second, take and respect the expertise, because, you know, for me it took a good while to understand what can the Scrum methodology do for us, and a lot of it has to do with channeling and optimizing the flow of information and the communication. For example, while there is a distinct element that Kanban, and Tobias talked to that in his introductory statement, can do for us in a highly transactional world, to understand, you know, to help understand where's the work come from, where do we get stuck, where's, you know, and things like that. So there's a very distinct element of each of the methodologies that you need to carve out and then kind of map towards your destination. And then last comment, there's a limit of complexity. So if you throw three ways of addressing what you try to address at the team at the same time, while I hear Tobias saying, well, we have digital natives and we have, you know, there will always be people that are front runners and you know, just full on in, and there will be people that for whatever reason, in very individual reasons, feel, you know, overwhelmed or whatever the term is. So I think also, you know, keep an eye on the complexity if you try to do too much.
Yeah. So maybe one quick statement, Roger, on this. So the supermarket model and so on. Yeah. I think this is in fact also it is a bit vague. Yeah. So you cannot just do everything and call it agile. Yeah. Find your super individual way and then it's agile if you just put the label on it. And so there are certain methods, there are certain tools, there are certain supporting elements for that. And still, you and the team or the environment in which you're collaborating need to somehow find out like what are the right approaches, the right procedures, the right tools, methodologies, ways of communicating and collaborating out of this agile toolbox, yeah, and combine these. And the last thing on that is also, Dirk said you need to be clear about the why, yeah, what is the purpose? And I would think, yes, to some degree, yes. To some degree, this is part of the exploration journey. Yeah. So I can only say that I have observed a number of effects of this type of collaboration and interaction that I hadn't imagined before. Yeah. And just in a retrospective, I found out, oh, wow, this is like providing this impact and this value individually or for the team or for the business and so on. And so this is part really of the iterative process there. Yeah.
So let me be a little bit provocative here, because I've been a consultant for 20 years and I consider myself an intellectual person. I like complexity. I like interesting things, be they in business or in arts or whatever. And Andreas, I was struck by something you said in our preparatory call. You went back to Mary Follett and her theories. And so isn't it in the end about being smart? I mean, isn't it about looking at a situation and you know, like Dirk, like you said, you know, think about what's the problem here, what could be a solution, and consider the tools that you have, look at the people that you have, look at the environment you're in, you know, the resources that you have, the industry trends, and then just be smart and use tools that come to your mind. And then if you, by opening our LLI book, you get some ideas on what is called agile, okay, use that. But you know, part of me thinks, okay, now it's called agile and not against it. Yeah, it's called agile, but maybe it was called risk management or project management or quality management before, and that's all cool. So but the one thing that remains is be smart about it. So now a lot of hands went up. I think Andreas, Astrid, and Daniel.
You referred to me bringing in Mary Follett, the grand dame of management in the 1920s, into play when I said she was already speaking of power with, not power over, and the resulting question of how is the joining? How does the joining work? If there is many factors, many impulses, many leaders on lateral leadership, how is the joining being done? And without going into her theoretical approaches, I would say smart is definitely needed. No longer a chance to stand our context if we are not. I totally agree with Tobias. Of course, we have to adapt to the needs, but a certain smartness also is needed. It's no longer only rational left brain, but we need also emotional smartness, a lot of emotional intelligence. Otherwise, collaboration, especially deep retrospectives, where you talk about what really matters and not about the latest operational superficial something, is not so easily achieved as sometimes we believe.
Thank you, Andreas. Astrid, please.
Yes, I mean, I had a lot of projects where agility, or me as an agile transformation consultant or coach, better said, was perceived as, oh no, there's someone coming along with a new fad. And Dirk said something also built on experiences. And I think I even had projects where I didn't even take all the agile terms that you have, because they were not perceived as something positive. So it's more about what you do, not what you call it. And there were a lot of things already in these companies, very often, maybe also in your legal departments. I don't know that yet, but I heard about lean legal or something like that. So there are very many elements that have been there before in other methodologies. And you cannot say like that was all bad or wrong or not suitable. It's something evolving. And this is the overall agile approach. It's always evolving and you learn something new. And if you have an environment where really the people say, no, don't call me with something new, just don't call it like that. Take the old methodologies and try to apply it a little bit underneath the surface. I had that, and I was more successful with that than trying really to play like the Scrum card or whatever you have. So sometimes you have to be like that as well. That's my point.
A little bit of a stealth flyer and don't use burnt terminology. Really. Very smart. Daniel, please.
Yeah, smart really triggered me, and Andreas took some of it off when he was talking about smart can be different things. Because when you say smart, I think of lawyers. You know, lawyers, we are smart, and that's something we're proud of. But I've seen cases where lawyers corrupted agility with being smart. You know, they just turned it around, and they made you, and then they said, you see, it's not working. So I think what's more important than being smart is to be persistent and willing, like this emotional smartness that I heard, I felt like Andreas was talking about. You know, this is really something you have to want it. Yeah, and try for a while and then find out. Yeah, the more you fuck around, the more you find out. And there you have to be open for that. And so smart, yeah, we are smart, but it might not help us. It might even corrupt us. And that's just a warning that I want to give to the world.
Very interesting again. And Andreas, something you said about you know, being sometimes slower and fast is not always good. And also language matters, and the kind of the right brain and kind of the emotional side matters. What I'm wondering, because I'm interested in marketing, I gotta say, I love marketing, and I think the legal industry has not been doing well on marketing. That in Germany there were legal reasons for it. As a lawyer, you were not allowed to market your services, different from the US. In the US, you have big billboards saying, "Hey, call us," you know, and claim your problem or whatever. But in terms of marketing, is Agile already over? I mean, you know, there's a hype for new ideas, for terms, and then people get interested, and some may like it, some may not like it, but there's certainly a kind of a wave or a fad, as you call it, and what I'm wondering is that already over with Agile? Is it, are you, you know, when you come into a legal department and say, let's be Agile, are people turned off because they think it's already, it's burned or not? Dirk, I remember you telling me it was not. So let's start with Dirk, then go to Andreas, and then go to Astrid.
Yeah, happy to react. So is it the next wave that is starting to run out, basically? And if that's your question, I think I look more at it like, you know, the old Tetris game. It's just another piece that falls into its place, like many other things that we need to embrace as a more monolithic function that used to think that we've learned everything we need to know at university and just apply it, and that's it. I think this is just another, I think, a big piece, but another piece that falls into its place and that we must and should use to improve our base. The other comment I would say is, let's lift our head and not only look at the methodology, and also maybe not only at the why, but also at the, you know, what else it can do. And I think a big element is, and there's also research that teams that, you know, adopt agile methodologies successfully, you know, that has a positive impact on the culture. The communication goes up, it becomes more direct, it becomes more open, maybe language changes and so on. So I think we should not overlook the positive side effects that we can achieve next to the immediate thing we want to resolve.
Thank you, Dirk. Andreas?
I would say it is here to stay. It is here to stay, I think, because it fits the complex world that we have, and it is an operationalized way of dealing with complexity. And in terms of is the hype over, I would say yes and no. I mean, it's the innovation absorption curve. The major adopters, the majority of adopters, it's just there. And many are just starting, and the late adopters have not yet even started. So I think it will stay for the next many years, even though the early adopters already recognize its limits, particularly also its misconceptions when you start to scale it, and it's not always working, and so far and so on. And sometimes I also believe separate the domains. Depending on the nature of the problem, it must not be agile, the answer, but still collaboration, emotional intelligence, smart cooperation, it will stay and it is needed.
Yeah, I love that comment. It doesn't always have to be the one thing that you have in mind. Just because you have a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. Astrid and Tobias, please.
That's true. You have to have the right tool for your problem at hand, right? So it's not always the hammer. That's true. And yes, and also I think Tobias said it before. I also think it just starts in many topics like legal, maybe sales even. It's not too much into the agile environment yet. But I think it's here to stay, definitely. And it's an evolving methodology as well. And as you said, Roger, before, there are many elements. I mean, there are different, the depth that you want to have in agility, it's up to you. It's up to your conditions. It's up to where you want to go and the why, especially. So, and what Tobias said, that the digital natives, excuse me, please, of course, the new generation or the next generation, and it doesn't matter what age you have, but in what age we live, right? It's about self-organization and empowerment. And all this is part of agility and the agile methodologies that we want to apply. So I think, yeah, it's very suitable to the times we're living in.
Excellent. Thank you, Astrid. Tobias, you have 1 minute maximum.
All right, yeah, that should be enough. So I think, I mean, if we are looking at the industry, which probably is a little bit more than a trailblazer than the legal profession is in this regard, some exceptions all here. I mean, build hardware as if it would be software. Yeah, so things like that. BMW wants to become a somewhat software company. I think that is such a mega trend, so that this is in fact here to stay. And I think the point here is digital empowers agile and vice versa. And so what we'll be seeing in terms of digital transformation, there's so much more to come. This will be a super driver for this. Last point, you can kill it if it's just this labeling and this vague stuff, and you don't make it candid, and you don't know what you're talking about, and you don't know like how to really implement that in a way that makes sense and also feels good.
Awesome.
Well said.
Ending on time. Astrid, gentlemen, this has been a wonderful discussion. I'm really thrilled. I thought it was excellent to get your ideas. I hope our audience enjoyed it as well. And yeah, we'll be coming up with another Liquid Experience call at some point. I think the topic might be workation or some other topic. It would be great to have you as listeners. Thank you very much again to our panelists, to Tobias, Dirk, Andreas, Daniel, and Astrid, and have a wonderful rest of the day.